So I remember when I told you that if I um, were to tell you my whole story, I was scared that you wouldn't talk to me anymore because every person in my life who I've told my story has stopped talking to me. But I feel like it's fitting for this, uh, and it's kind of lengthy. It's a little bit of a different way of looking at things, but I think it's fitting to the situation. So. Um, I'm just going to jump right in. When I was in the middle of my experience, I was shown things, and I was shown many things, and I came to many understandings. And one of the understandings that I came from, and literally I was told, this is the part of my story that I would call hearing the voice of God. And that was when I was observing myself from above me, and I literally heard the voice of God say, "You cannot love her if you judge her." And that changed my whole life. Um, I was forced to look at myself, and I resisted and I resisted and I resisted. And then when I realized that, because in my resistance, I would try to observe myself, but I would jump over looking at myself and like pretend that I was thinking, like, I don't know, I could trick God. I didn't even have a relationship with God before this. I didn't even know anything like that existed in that way until I had this experience. But it was so comfortable, and it was so real and true, and I knew I had been there before, and there was just no doubt. I heard what I heard. I experienced what I experienced, and if I sound crazy, then so be it. I've sounded crazy to literally every single person in my life who has stopped talking to me. So, but I like to think that I'm planting seeds, and if it's not understood now, then hopefully it'll be understood later. When I realized what that meant, you cannot love her if you judge her, I realized that it was just a knowing that had come in, that all of the suffering that I had in my life came from my own resistance. I was actually told that. I asked, because I've been in pain my whole life, and like physical pain in my joints and whatnot, as you know. I talked about that, and I asked the question, why have I been in pain my whole life? And before I could even ask the question, the answer just popped in my head. And the answer was, you have resisted your body your whole life. And the more you resist your body, the more pain you will feel. And I have, over the last couple of years since that experience, it's actually been a few years now, I have applied that understanding to everything in my life. Suffering comes from resistance, and pain comes from resistance. Now, a child isn't going to understand resistance. They're not going to understand, like, oh, because you're resisting that, you're suffering. And they're also not going to understand how truly deep their own knowledge is. Because especially at, like 9 and 11 years old, they have created their disconnection from their parents, and they see themselves as their own being. They're something separate of their parents. And that realization, thankfully, most of the time, it happens slowly, and it's not so abrupt and traumatic for children. But whenever parents separate, it's much like a birth. You see, like, kids are masters at rebirths. So, like, being separated from their mother during birth, that's painful, and that's a release, and that's traumatizing. And then their first bath and their first diaper change, and all of these things are traumatizing. And it's not until they get older and they observe society and the things people say that they begin to build their own ideas, their own structure, their own program around what trauma is, what is and is not traumatizing. And essentially, they will use how they feel about things to associate it to these words. And so, unfortunately, we have a lot of words flying around society right now around trauma and labeling people. And so when you have a child that is experiencing a disconnection, it is like another birth. It's very traumatizing. It's a separation from the mother. And I'm going to be honest, I looked up your ex last night and I did read her Facebook profile. And with the little bit of information you gave me, and I know it's very limited and I'm not going to make assumptions, I'm just speaking purely off of my observation. I would say that she is in the middle of her own transformation. And from the outside, I would say that she looks like she's crazy and she's lost her mind. But on the inside, I would say that she is that damaged child that was not properly nurtured, was not properly guided. And so she's now, as the mother, being forced to have to do that for herself. And that is a very tumultuous place to be. It's really, really easy to blame everyone outside of you when you are experiencing that, especially as a mother, especially as a woman, especially as a mother and a woman who was a caretaker and very giving of herself. And I did read back when the two of you were together there, and I'm sorry I was being like snoopy, but I'm just being really honest and trying to share with you. And so I hope you don't mind. I'm not trying to be presumptuous. I did see that she is very focused on the fact that you are a narcissist. And obviously you are not a narcissist, because a narcissist is someone who can't feel compassion or regret and doesn't really care about the way that they affect other people as long as their own needs are met and whatnot. And you had said that she was projecting that she was the one acting in those ways that she's labeling you as. And what it is it's that damaged inner child that she has, going back to old habits and old ways of coping and dealing with things, which is to blame someone else. And so, like, self-realization is a long and tumultuous path, and self-accountability, some people would rather die than look at themselves to the degree where they have to be accountable for literally every single choice they've ever made. And for a mother who has been a people pleaser or has been so compassionate or so giving of herself, and she might feel like her cup is empty, but then she's also expected to function in a different way. And that can also feel like an assault. And I feel like I could just see that in her. And while she's in the middle of her transformation, I don't think that she can really accurately be there for her own children as they are acting out their damaged childhood. And that could be a reminder to her of where she has maybe not done things in a way that she wished she could had or would had. And so that causes more conflict with you. But I'm not trying to defend her, and I'm not trying to talk about you and her, but what I'm trying to do is build the foundation, the structure that your children are observing. And also taking you to a place of my knowing and my understanding is even deeper than this. So I hope you can ride this train with me and I don't take it off the tracks too much. So I would say, from my experience in knowing how we are all connected and what is what and why, I would say that when your child is cutting herself, it's so much deeper than she even understands. Because she doesn't understand that she is the world. And I know that sounds so crazy, like cliche, but in the sense that we all exist in here, we all exist behind here. The physical world around us, the things that we touch, the things we smell, the things that we feel with our senses, is all very related to the body. And so the closest we can get to a clear understanding of our world, of our physical world, exists within the body. And so if you were to imagine, because you are all going through tremendous change, and it's the same, it's the expansion and contraction. And so when we're expanding, we're opening ourselves up to possibilities, and we feel safe, and we are available to letting our environment in. And when we are contracting, we are hardening ourselves, and we are pushing, and there is resistance and a need for release. And so if you can imagine a mother giving birth, this is what your daughter is experiencing, except she doesn't know she's experiencing this. And what's happening is she's birthing a new version of herself through the experience of the change in dynamics of your household, which was her world. And because of the change and the breakdown of what her world was, now she's being forced to go within herself and feel herself in her body. And that in itself can be very traumatic. Now, if you can imagine being in that contraction and hiding within herself, that there needs to be some kind of release. And it's not just about hormones, and it's not just about like, you know, I cut myself and these hormones are released and so I feel better. It's so much deeper than that. It's something that she herself doesn't even understand. Like, she doesn't know the words to even express it. And so how is a therapist supposed to help her, right? Because our birth stories are all individual and especially, you know, our own and very personalized. And so she's experiencing the grief of loss. She is experiencing the contraction of the breakdown of her world. She is experiencing the new living in-ness of her body, and that feels like pressure. That feels like when I asked God, why have I been in so much pain my whole life, it was shown to me that it's very uncomfortable being in the human body. It's very like tight in here, and there's this want and this need to just be released. When you remember what it's like to not be in the body, then you have contrast, you have something to compare it to. And when the comparison, when the other thing feels better than the thing that you're experiencing right now, You're just reaching for the next feel-good thing, the next feel-good thought. People don't usually say, do, or think anything unless they have a belief that they will feel better in the saying, doing, thinking, having of it. So she's not just cutting herself. She's creating rivers of release. She is, in her own way, in her own ability, without the clear understanding of what's going on, giving herself the release to try to come out of that contraction. And whether she cuts herself or she finds someone who can speak to her in a way that she understands, or she experiences, and honestly, this is the fix to everything. The fix to literally everything is to experience the exact opposite of what you're experiencing. And so, like, if you have a broken bone, the fix to it is to have a mended bone. If you are starving, the fix to it is to not be starving, right? To eat. If you are experiencing this sadness of loss, then the fix to that would be experiencing the gratitude and the joy of receiving. And when it comes to the mother, because the mother is the world, your mother is where you are nurtured and where you are grown and where you feel safe. And if the mother is not healthy, which their mother is not healthy, she's dealing with her own wounded child, then she has lost the nurturing and the safety and the growing. And so now she is forced to find that within herself. She's going from the mother being the world to that self-realization that her body is now the world. I know that sounds silly, but it all has to do with our senses, everything we perceive outside of ourselves. But then there's the emotion. So the emotion is, she can't be stuck there, but without understanding of what's going on, because emotion is basically energy in motion, right? And so without the understanding of why mom is suddenly changed and why she's acting like this, and why dad is suddenly, the roles are so different, her energy is not freely moving, it's not in motion. And so her emotions are trapped. Like if you were to imagine the earth and the just volcanoes, like every emotion that she's feeling are volcanoes, and these volcanoes are not allowed to erupt because what happens when volcanoes erupt all over the world, like there's mass destruction, right? And so when you have a kind and loving heart, like your daughter has, like every little girl does have, we don't want to cause that destruction, that explosion. And so what happens then? Well, we have to create some kind of a release. Society, unfortunately, puts words to things, and words are very limiting. And so when you're speaking to a child, especially the age of Aria too, but Liv, it just makes me want to cry. Because it's not that we're not supposed to experience these things. It's that disconnection from the mother. It's that when the mother has to disconnect herself to heal, and I hope I'm not projecting, but this is just through my observance. The father, the comfort of the father comes in patterns. And so if your patterns are also disrupted, then there will be equal amount of pain from the father. Now, fortunately, by what Aria had said, I can see that your patterns have not been terribly changed as much as the mother's destruction has affected them. And so the least I mean, it's a force. So the least destructive force in their world is you. So you're their comfort, but you are their comfort with your patterns. So as long as you consistently stay with your patterns, they'll be okay. And as long as they can understand why mom has to heal, why mom has to focus on herself, and why, because you can't be loyal to a substance and then also be loyal to your children. Just like you cannot be loyal to yourself completely in your healing and then always also be loyal to someone else. And it's a lot easier for a mother to abandon her children if she herself doesn't know how to ease her own contractions and to accept and surrender to her own birth of her new self. So essentially, your children are taking on the pains of the mother because of her yelling, because of her resistance, her aggression when they're around her. It feels like an absence of love, I'm sure. There's so many things that she's craving. There's so many things that she's going through. And until someone who really truly understands that can explain that to her in a way that she understands, she's going to need a release. A release can come in the form of alcohol. It can come in the form of all substances. It can come in the form of overly exercising. It can come in the form of cutting. Cutting seems to be the most, like the quickest fix. And people usually like things to be easy, especially nowadays. We have this instant gratification. And so she is trying to soothe herself. And she has a mother who doesn't know how to soothe herself. She has a mother who needs love and nurturing. And that mother is supposed to be there to be loving and nurturing her right now. And unfortunately, the disconnection that is occurring between your girls and their mother is something that they can't come back from, and they won't be able to come back from. This is a forever thing. Children don't need therapy. Their caretakers do. Children just need understanding, and they need understanding in a language that they can understand. And so I would say, if you were to sit her down and tell her there are no consequences to any action or anything that you would have to say or do right now. You can say, do, behave, do anything that you feel prompted to do, you feel guided to do by your emotions, regardless of what it is, even if it's banging your head up against the wall. Act that out. Act that out and see what that is. And she chose cutting herself. It didn't come by chance. She's creating rivers to release what she's being told she's not allowed to release. And she probably doesn't even know what it is she's needing to release, because she's relying on words. A lot of therapists like to say words to kids. Words aren't really all that helpful. Unless you're saying, it's okay for you to act it out. It's okay for you to do it. and you're not going to be punished. And I'm going to love you through it. And I'm right here. I would almost guarantee that her need or her want to cut herself would go away just because she felt safe. And for someone to be able to explain to her the mother wound and how her own mother is not healed. And because her own mother is not healed, she cannot provide the healed version of herself for her own children. That will allow her to forgive her mom. And it'll also allow her to get in touch with her own strength without feeling like she has to fix something. So I would almost bet money, but I shouldn't because I have none, that if you were to sit down with her and just express to her in the most simple form, and you know your children better than anyone, that she cannot love her mom if she is judging her by her actions and allowing her actions to make her angry. She cannot love herself if she is judging herself by her own actions, and if she is allowing her own actions to make her angry. And teach her how to hold herself and how to nurture herself so that she no longer feels the need for it outside of herself. Her world might feel like it's a little less destructive. It's funny because I used to want to be a child therapist until I realized children don't need therapy. They just need to be held and told that they are safe and that nothing that they are doing is wrong and that it's okay and that they're just trying to feel better, and you understand that. And that's really all they need. They just need someone to say, you know what, I get it. You just are looking for the next feel-good thought. You're just looking for the next feel-good thing. And you're trying to release all of that tightness, that tension, that overwhelm, that all of that everything that makes you feel like you're needing to explode. And there are healthier avenues, and therapists will call it like coping mechanisms or whatever. But really with children, their brains are still developing. And so while they are very good at understanding things, they actually understand things through, and this is why children honestly should run the world, because a child sees things really truly as they are, very non-convoluted. We convolute things as we get older. The more society tells us things and the more we convince ourselves of things, and we have these beliefs and we build our lives upon these beliefs that we have. Children are malleable, especially at Arya's age, that live. That's why children usually at Arya's age aren't cutting yet. They're outwardly saying things like, I wonder if I took that knife, it would bring me to Jesus. Or I wonder if I drank all of that, it would bring me to Jesus. These are all just manifestations of all of the things that they don't understand. But the thing is they don't need to understand it the way that you understand it or the way that I understand it. They just need to understand that mom had trauma as a child and she hasn't healed that. And so now she's being forced to heal herself. and she is going through her own rebirth of whoever she might be through this. And then explain to them, because children understand birth. They understand awakening, because this is what children do. They go through rapid changes. They're constantly going through births of new versions of themselves. They're constantly going through awakenings. They understand that. So to hold them and to love them and tell them that nothing that they are doing is wrong, that everything that they are doing is accurate to the life experience that they have had up to this point, and to help guide them through their own rebirth, their own new awakening into the person that they are becoming. Then it's not trauma. It can be the difference between a horrific birth of your baby and a beautiful birth that doesn't involve, the slapping of the bottom and the screaming and the clothes and the diaper and the sudden bath and the cream in the eyes and moving them around and giving them no choice in the matter. It can look more like a birth in their environment, in comfort, with, yes, the squeeze and the contraction, but with the peace in the letting it occur, and the peace in the relaxing into it, and understanding that all of this pain and all of this stuff, there's something on the other side of it. Children understand birth. They understand enlightenment. They intuitively understand it far more than you do, or that I do. If she were to know her mother is birthing herself into a new version of herself, and don't judge her through it, but love her, that her herself is being birthed into a new version of herself, and teach her how to love herself through it and not judge herself. And so when you say like you're cutting yourself, she's not. She's actually not. She's not cutting herself. I know that in the most layman's terms, like she's getting something sharp and she's, cutting her skin open, but that's not really what she's doing. What she's doing is she's creating her own release where she has control, where she is meeting her own needs. So if you could guide her through it, let her know this pain is for a reason. This pain is worth it. This pain is part of life experience. And what she's going through is the expansion and contraction, just like when you're having a baby. Those muscles, they have to, and then they have to push it out. And then they have to push it out. And it's like 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. It's not easy, but this is what is birthing the new version of her. And so just like birthing a baby, she is birthing a new version of herself. And as her father, you could guide her through that just by expressing that to her, if that makes sense. Anyways, she's going to be just fine. She is fine. There's nothing wrong with her, and there's nothing wrong with what she's doing. And the talk that Arya has, the dark talk, that it's actually not all that dark. These children understand. They understand the concept of death and rebirth, and death and rebirth. And the words, the only words that they know to associate to death and rebirth are, well, death and Jesus, and things that they know that cause death. And Jesus would be what they would experience on the other side, because these are just things that they were taught. But really, internally, they understand ending, new beginning, ending, new beginning. Children remember. They remember. When you're born, you remember. You remember all your past lives. You remember each individual death. And we forget as we get older. And then some of us might die, and then we remember again. And then we remember that we remembered. She's giving birth to a new version of herself, while her mother is also giving birth to a new version of herself. And while it's someone else's responsibility and her mother's responsibility to herself to guide her and to comfort her through that and to give her the environment to give birth in peace. Unfortunately, Arya and Liv, they are too young and they don't have that understanding because of the world. They're still trying to learn the world. She can give herself her own environment as best to her ability, but it's your job to provide that safe space, that plush, mossy, beautiful wooded area that's ideal for her to give birth. And then to just remind her that the pains of the contractions are just a part of it. And that she doesn't have to take control. She doesn't have to cut herself open to create the release. That if she were to just not judge herself and not put words on it, not put labels on it, like good or bad, and just let it be what it is. And just assure her, and as long as you remain consistent in your patterns, pattern, paternal, mother, madre, matrix, the world, which essentially is what matrix means, is the world that you live in. But all your responsibility is to maintain your patterns so that she can trust that the environment that you create for her to give birth is safe. She doesn't have to cut herself open. It will happen all on its own. And it'll be painful, yes. But in the end, you get to explain to her what that feels like. Because she has no idea what the new her will look like or feel like. So you can even help guide her through that. Ask her, what does the next version of you look like? What does the next version of you feel like? What makes you feel good? Give her goals, those type of goals. Not goals of like, where do you want to be in 3 months or 6 months or some shit. That doesn't work. That doesn't work for kids. Kids are really good with their imagination. Gosh, especially Arya, especially your girls. Ask them, if you were to imagine yourself as someone you love and admire and want to be just like that, what does that self look like? What does that self feel like? What might that self say in certain situations? They'll be able to answer. And even if their answers don't make sense to you, they'll build an image in their mind. And that image will eventually be what they become. It gives them something to look forward to, so that it's not just the unknown, because that's really scary. And if we can remove the fear in our children's lives, then they can remain being children. And if you can remove the fear in birth, then I think that we're more willing to step out of contraction and allow surrender to occur. So I hope that helps. Stick with your patterns. Stay consistent. Explain to them their mother is healing her own child, and that you're there for her and you're there for them while they themselves are healing in their own childhood, so that they don't grow up to be a mother having to also heal herself despite her own children.